Hello, everyone. My name is Yeugenia. Welcome to this episode of the Magnificent by Design series. I'm here with Debora Seidman, who is a writer, a poet, a guide, a teacher, and a playwright. I know, Debora, you're also working on something very interesting that's coming out shortly, which you'll share with our viewers. Welcome, Debora. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Yeugenia. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. And I know you and I have known each other for a number of years. Just for all of you, I know that you will read about who Debora is. We'll share information underneath in the description. But Debora and I have been working together a number of years ago, and when I started writing a book, and then I put that aside and came back recently to restart my writing. And Debora has been helping me and guiding me. And I know, Debora, you are very good at this because you have helped me with so many insights, and you have helped me to stay inspired to writing and to stay organized as well as committed. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's been a pleasure to watch your development as a writer, and in being part of this process of midwifing your book, I've gotten to know how much wisdom you have. So now it's interesting and to be on the other side of who you are. So it's wonderful.
Thank you so much. And coming from you, it's a huge, it means a lot. So if we can start maybe with the first moment, because I know you've had a lot of interesting parts to your life, and you're walking your unique path. And that's the whole point of these series, is bringing up and highlighting women who walk their unique path, no matter how challenging they can be. And I know a lot of what you do is very authentic and from the heart, from the soul. So what was a defining moment for you that set you on this path? Maybe you can share with us a little bit.
Yeah. So for a long time, I have been walking this path of writing and healing, where writing has been healing for me, and the way I teach writing is healing for people. And there's a moment when you asked this question, what popped into my mind, a moment many years ago, 2009, when I had been, unbeknownst to me, living with carbon monoxide poisoning, and only found out through being evacuated one night, middle of the night, very New England, cold, icy night, standing on the driveway while these, AmeriGas people in hazmat suits came into our apartments. But so that was like the end of like months of, not knowing what was going on. And as it turned out, I had this next day appointment that had taken me months to get with a master extraordinary acupuncturist. And now he was able to help treat this, what was going on. And he said something to me when I left the session that day that turned out to really be defining, both for me and for the work that I came to develop. And he said, if you rest now, you can heal. I think we've all experienced, like, sometimes when we go through something that's so stressful, it's actually hard to rest because our nervous system is in shock. There's that danger response. So his permission to rest, made a big difference. And I had been barely sleeping for months because of now, what was the carbon monoxide. So anyway, I was in a temporary living situation where I had this wood stove, and I sat in front of the stove, and then I took this long nap, and I woke up and just really spontaneously wrote a poem. And poetry had been part of my life, but for months when I had been on the survival with, not knowing what's going on, I was so sick, poetry had been like the last thing from my mind. And it just came really spontaneously. And then over the next few days, as the rest kind of unfolded, I started writing this article called Rest Until You Remember What You Love, because that's really just spontaneously what happened. And I already, had an easing connected to my teaching, and people really responded to it. And it ended up becoming this foundation. I teach this combination of writing, creative writing, and radical self-care. And Rest Until You Remember What You Love ended up being like a foundation piece of courses that I taught over really the next almost 20 years. And it became, and I came to see, both for me and my students, how important this is. And a question, I teach a combination of creative writing and radical self-care and these kind of soul inquiry questions. So this question, what do you need to rest from, became a question that like everybody needed. We live in this world where like whether you're dealing with a chronic illness or caring for your parents or, I don't know anybody who isn't dealing with a great deal of stress in the world. And rest, I mean, sometimes it does mean taking a nap, like, for me, I need, but it's a much deeper question. What do you need to rest from? What is the kind of rest that returns you to what you love? Because when we're restored, when we're replenished, when we're balanced, we know who we are and what we love, but sometimes we get so far from it. So, it's one of those things where for me, like illness has been a great teacher for me and has been what's led me to a lot of the teaching that I offer to other people in a world where we're so out of balance. And, the combination of creative writing and really listening to our bodies, really honoring, has been a thread in my life and in my teaching for many, many years. And that defining moment, I know it's, it's kind of a long story. It's hard to like make it a quick story, but that's, it really shaped a lot of things for me.
That's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing, Deborah. And I am sorry that sounds like a horrible experience. And the fact that you were able to overcome it, but also tune in to what you needed to do at the time. And kind of it's interesting how people come into our life with a specific message. And I'm sure the acupuncturist, whatever he or she was saying in that moment, was kind of from the heart. And it was a message that kind of led you to where you are today, really, to write from to write and resting from whatever it is we're dealing with, and all of us have so much to deal with.
Yeah, and the old, in the Chinese language, the word for crisis, and I'm sure we've all heard this by now, the word for crisis and opportunity, and there's more layers to what the word actually means, but it's kind of a simplified, almost become a cliche, but it's not a cliche, and our world is on fire. I mean, crisis is everywhere, and it's hard, and it's asking us to tune in so carefully and not in any regimented way. I mean, I think for me and for everybody I know, it's like everything is changing, day to day in our personal lives and globally and collectively. And so, you may have a practice that's been working for you for a long time, and maybe it's still the go-to practice, but maybe it's not, because what we're dealing with is just the stakes are higher, the level of stress, stress doesn't even begin to cover it sometimes. But yeah, that's been part of my path for a long time. And, it doesn't always feel like, oh, it's all together and I'm going to overcome anything, right?
Yes.
Just like muddling through, like all of us. But over time, things get clearer. And the vision part of it and how it can serve other people, becomes clearer over time.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. I think that clarity is an important thing. Clarity about a lot of things in our life, right? What's important, what's not important, what we want, what we need to rest from. All of these questions are so important. I know that we've looked at your chart, and you're a manifesting generator 3-5 profile, which makes you a martyr heretic, and you have you have the right angle cross of Maya. So you're here to offer details to the world, to the people in this world, and the detail is required in only in specific moments. So it's interesting. And looking at your channels in human design, there's a channel of judgment, which kind of is about what's not working and how things need to work. So it's interesting that you are, or attention to detail channel of exploration, which is really about kind of exploring kind of what's important. Channel of cycles, which is kind of all about, it was when one cycle ends, the new cycle begins. And I know that you haven't really been familiar with your design. I know you said that you've had some interest, and you might even have a reading either, and we'll be talking about kind of a little bit of your information, because I've sent you some details. I'm sure that you'll have some questions, but it's interesting that you've been living and kind of living your design. I think, looking at your chart very intuitively, it sounds like. And I do believe that we don't necessarily need to have this information, but it's a nice reinforcement that, we are living intuitively, kind of in alignment with who we are and who we were always meant to be, kind of in our design. How do you connect to your intuition? How do you kind of, I know you said, you were sitting, but can you talk about maybe some of the process of sort of coming to writing, even like before, years and years ago? Because I know you've been working with women. I think you've talked about like women who are dealing with trauma, survivors, and so on. But I'm assuming that it was always connected to writing and kind of and detail. So I'm just fascinated with the fact that you've been in alignment in your life for a long time, and lived sort of it very authentically from the heart and the soul.
I wanted to be a writer since I was a little girl. My dad would tell stories like toward the end of his life, and we would be out somewhere and see a little child, with a book, and he would say, "That was you." I was the child who always had a book. I was the bookworm in a family of athletes. Like everyone else in my family was playing sports and getting trophies, my siblings, and I was always curled up with a book. And I wanted to be a writer from a very young age. And I got scared of writing at a very young age. When I was in, I think, 7th grade, I got a lot of praise for my writing. It was suggested I go to college literature classes. And this started these years of fighting writing. And so I started hiding my writing. So I didn't really start writing again until after college, when I was in my 20s, and my best friend died of cancer, and she was 27, I was 28, and she was on the verge of becoming a singer. She was also on the verge of being graduating to be a social worker, work with kids who were abused. And after her death, I took my first writing workshop. And soon after that, my first play was produced in New York. But this theme of like writing in silence has been an issue for me for a long time. The things I wanted to write about when I was a child, I felt weren't welcome. I had a mother who was mentally ill. There were suicide attempts. This is not the thing that was talked about in a nice upper, middle class Jewish suburb in the 60s.
Yes.
So I went silence. I felt like, I couldn't. And so when my first play was produced, and again, this was however many years ago, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, soon after that, I was invited to teach creative writing for women trauma survivors. And so this, my own silence and my own trauma history was part of my both evolution and what blocked me from being, a writer, but also part of my calling as a teacher from, a young, the earliest part of my teaching career. I had these, 2 years of working in a center that was, it was like an alternative to a hospitalization program. It was a day treatment program for women trauma survivors. And there was a lot of creative classes. So the creative writing class was, what I was teaching. I was co-teaching, and I got this extraordinary supervision about trauma. And I saw women reclaim their lives from reclaiming their voices. And we weren't specifically guiding them to write about their trauma. It was a writing class. So we would do creative writing exercises like I had been trained in, but over the course of months. And they had, they had therapists. It was a very well supported program. And women would get their children back, women would start getting jobs again. And I saw the power of reclaiming a voice to heal a life. And I saw that with myself too. Soon
Yes.
after that, I ended up performing a one-woman show. And again, as I said, I had this history was silence. It was one thing to write a play that someone else performed. That was,
Yeah.
already a lot for me to be public in New York. But then I was writing these pieces, and it was it happened kind of, it wasn't a plan, but I was in this writing workshop myself, and my teacher with my friends said, "Oh, I'd love to see you perform these." And I had a theater background, but I'd never been an actor. I got these grants that I didn't think I was going to get, but suddenly I had these, Massachusetts Cultural Council grants. So suddenly I'm performing this one woman show. And I sort of, it was very intense, but it was very well received. But for me, reclaiming my voice
Yes.
and working with my students' voices, I've lost the thread of what the initial question was. I'm answering.
Yes. No, that's and that's wonderful. I mean, I think it's so important to reconnect to our voice. The question was about how do you connect to your intuition, and how
Oh,
do you
okay. I
get
didn't
into
answer
writing?
your question. Sorry.
I think you've been living intuitively for a long time,
I
and so it
guess
just
so.
became such a natural thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think so. And, one of the things, because I have had, chronic illness for a long time, is that I've had to be very tuned into my body. I've been really chemically sensitive. I've had, a lot of challenges with fatigue. I have to pay attention to what I eat, and this has been going on since I was in my 20s. But also this history with, the longing to write and the not wanting to write. I mean, and not feeling like I was free to write, both like blocked my intuition, but because I still really wanted to write. And especially after Linda, like after my friend died, and, she was so young, and she, it was like, I felt like I needed to write. So I had to, I chose to really honor that intuition, which was that I needed to write, as well as work through a lot of the blocks and challenges. So writing is one way that I hear my intuition. If I need to listen to my body, like years and years ago, some healer that I worked with gave me a book called, I think it was called The Power of Your Other Hand, basically writing with your non-dominant hand.
Oh, wow.
So that's a practice that I learned, and now I often offer with students. It's an incredible way to hear your intuition, because when you're writing with your non-dominant hand, you're, using the other side of your brain. So, but also, like, I was a poet. I didn't start out to be a playwright, but I was in these writing workshops and characters started talking to me. And so I think that's what, a lot of artists, like we're intuitive without thinking about it,
Hmm.
like the writing comes through you. Like the very first monologue of my play, that was an award-winning play produced in New York, just came through in a writing where I didn't sit down to say, now I'm going to write a monologue that, from this character called Samuel, that's going to end up being this play that gets produced. I don't even remember what the prompt was, but it was was in writing workshops the way I teach, where we had a prompt, and this voice came through. So again, it's like I wasn't like setting out to listen to my intuition, but you know, being intuitive is, again, it's part of the creative process. So I think, at this point in my life, I do have like specific ways that I tune into my intuition. Like if I need to make a decision, like right now I'm facing all these complicated dental procedures,
Yes.
travel, and things that impact. And so, I need to tune into my intuition, because I like to, ask my own guidance.
Yes.
Like, and for that to happen, like, there's sort of circumstances, like I can't be too stressed, because I won't hear clear guidance, So sometimes I'll do a movement practice. I'll meditate, maybe I'll go outside and take a walk, but something to calm that mind and be more in my body. That's how I'll, ask for intuition when I need to make decisions. And in some ways it's similar for writing, like, the memoir I'm working on now, when I'm in a generative process with the writing, I like to be as a clear channel as I can be. I'm a writer who hears things. Like I will start writing like that character all those years ago. Like I heard his, I heard him.
Mhm.
And when I'm writing a poem or when I'm working on a chapter of my memoir, I will hear it. Like I'm very auditory. Some writers are very visual. I'm
Yeah.
not so visual, but I hear things. So I need enough quiet around me. So now I'm giving you again a very long answer, but intuition is important. And again, I'm someone who has been both blocked from my intuition and had to work hard. And at the same time, I think, as you've said, always intuitively guided.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I know writing is something that obviously is your passion, but also because you've worked with trauma survivors, and even now you've had a number of courses that where you kind of you bring writing into people's lives, and sometimes you think you bring it as healing. So, what would you recommend to the people who are watching us, sort of as a practice for somebody who feels inclined to write, but maybe just that doesn't even have to be anything big, but to help them reconnect kind of with what they love, with what they need to rest from, to for some clarity. What would you recommend?
Um, well, as like a way to start writing again, or as a way to write.
Yes. And as a way to reconnect with their intuition, maybe because they feel sort of that inclination. So I mean, I love writing. When I write, um, sometimes about my feelings or whatever, I just find I get clarity. So
Right,
if somebody, because not everybody obviously is inclined to write. Some people
right,
like to sing, or but people
right.
who are turning
That,
to or feel that writing might be one of their ways to reconnect to themselves.
well, I guess, there's a lot of ways to answer that question. And I think there isn't really like one thing, because people are so different and come to writing or the longing to write for so many different reasons. But there's one prompt that kind of can work so well, kind of for a lot of people in a lot of different circumstances. And one thing that can help if you really want to start writing and connect in with your intuition or your guidance is to have some structure around it. And there's this prompt that's just what, 3 words: what matters now? And if you
What
sit
matters now?
down and you write what matters now, and the simple trick of turning on a timer, like if you just have literally 5 minutes, and we all know that we're all way too overscheduled and busy, but
Yes.
5 minutes when you put a timer on will be very different than 5 minutes without that timer, because you'll focus. The timer helps to hold
Hmm.
the boundary for you. It's and 10 minutes if you have it, what matters now. But what matters now is a really great way in. And honestly, I've used it like, I mean, it first was given to me in a writing workshop, decades ago. And like years ago, when my mother died, and a friend said, oh, it might be a good time for what matters now, like it's grounding,
Yeah.
it helps you tune in. And it can lead to, if you have a book idea, or if you're a poet, it can lead to the truest writing. And it can
Yes.
also lead you to your intuition, like that question, what do you need to rest from? What matters now? Maybe what matters now is you haven't slept for a week and you're too exhausted to think. And
Yeah.
matters now is slow down, take a little extra magnesium at night. I don't know, I mean, we can't hear our intuition when we're frazzled,
Yes.
you know, but what matters now, I find, has a way of like cutting through. And you could use that trick of using your non-dominant hand. If you feel like you're hearing, all the chaos in your mind, still, if you pick up that pen, and I do recommend writing with a pen. I mean, you can do a certain kind of writing on the computer, but when you're really trying to listen, uh,
Yes.
I think there's a difference with using a pen. So, people need to do what works. And but if you can't hear, if you pick up the pen, if you're right-handed with your left hand, if you're left-handed with your right hand, I would almost guarantee that something you need will come through. Um, what matters now? And then the other prompt or question that can be really amazing is, what does your soul want you to know?
What does your soul
What does your soul want you to know?
want you to know?
What
Yeah.
does my
What does
soul
your
want me to know now? Like those two prompts can go a long way to guiding you, grounding you, helping you move forward with writing, and help you listen to what you need to do, because we all have these unique paths and a unique destiny and a unique set of stressful circumstances
Yeah.
and powerful opportunities and portals, and writing is a portal. It can be. I mean, it can lead to a book like it has with you. It can lead to play or poems like it has for me, or now this book. But it can lead to your soul helping you, and our souls want to help us. But
Yeah.
like with our guides and angels, we have to ask. We have to find a way to receive and to listen. And writing at its best is about receiving. I mean, something, Yeugenia, you probably heard me say countless times, that I've said in how many workshops, is writing is less something you do and more something you allow. But being in that receptive space where the writing comes through you is half the work, which is why, again, you've experienced, and when I teach writing, I always start with some kind of grounding, centering meditation,
Yes.
connecting with the earth, connecting with your breath, connecting with your heart, because we need to open up space to allow that writing to come through. But if you give just a little chance for, the voice of your soul or the voice of your heart or the voice of your body to come through.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. This is super helpful. I mean, the prompts are amazing, and I know that they've worked for me when we've done them, in our classes or in our sessions. And I find it always, no matter where I come from, no matter how stressful the moment is, they're so grounding, and they allow me to really connect with what I need, with what I want, and with what's coming through me, which is I think the most important thing. I love the idea of writing with the opposite hand. It's a very interesting practice, and I think I'm going to try that. I haven't. I understand the kind of the principle behind it, so I'm definitely going to explore it.
And can I just say,
Yes, of
for you
course.
and for everybody, it can be really frustrating because, and you give yourself like a space on the page, because often, the writing is very messy or large. So sometimes I tell people, even if you just write like half of a sentence with your non-dominant hand, it will open something up. If it's too frustrating, you can stop after half a sentence. Sometimes you get used to it and you write, half of a paragraph or a few paragraphs, but it can be a little awkward. So you have to be a little patient, but you don't have to write, your whole chapter with your non-dominant hand. But truly, if you just open the portal, open the channel with your non-dominant hand, it opens another part of your brain, another part of your consciousness, and that other voice that might be more intuitive, more mystical, more spiritual, or more like the child part of you. It's a way to connect with the child, the body. But just, you have to be a little patient, but just get started and something magical happens.
I love it. Something magical happens. Yeah, I find when I think of you, there's that I think of magic. I don't know why, because you're such a there is this very sage quality to you, but there's also this very magician, very magical quality to you, because just since I've known you, you always talk about kind of these practices, and it's always so grounding, and always so, helps one to get present, which is very important.
Thank you. Thanks, Eugenia.
Yeah, thank you. Can you please share what you're working on right now? Because I know it's very important and something new that's coming through you. And I know the timing is good right now if any of our viewers are interested to join you on this new adventure.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to offer in a few, 3 or 4 weeks, starting in early July, a course called Writing a Path to Your Sacred Center. And this work is really the culmination of work I've been developing for a really long time. I mean, when I first started teaching, I was teaching a class called Writing the Body Home. So my teaching for a long time has been, embodied writing. I used to be an acupressurist and, have a lot of mind-body awareness. But that story that I told about the carbon monoxide poisoning that led to rest. So I was beginning to teach this body of work that was called Writing the Prayer of Your Life. And when I taught that, it was this deep combination of radical self-care and writing, and rest and remember what you love was like the first foundation of the radical self-care. And this winter, this January, honestly, soon around the time of the inauguration in the United States, which for me and for many of us was hugely scary and stressful. I was really frightened. And the chaos that's ensued. And I was very much guided to start bringing Writing the Prayer of Your Life out into the world again. But as I was working with it, the class, Writing a Path to Your Sacred Center, is then that name shifted just the foundation of the class, because that's what it's about, writing a path to your own sacred center. It's a deep dive class. It's 3 months of meeting twice a month for like a mini retreat, a 3-hour on Zoom, so people can join from all over. But you won't be in front of a camera for 3 hours. A lot of that time you'll be writing or even doing some movement practice, away from the camera, but we'll be writing together. And each class, it's connecting with the heart. There's actually one of maybe it's the second class, I think, is maybe called Rest Until You Remember What You Love. So that's a part of the class. But so is listening to your silence. I think there's a class called Your Silence is a Holy Place, because the people who this class is for is people who maybe are feeling overwhelmed or heartbroken by what's happening in the world, or enraged, or dealing with significant, life changes or transitions. And so it's a way, through everything I've been talking about, through writing, through listening to your body, through listening to the earth. There'll be a class where we'll be walking on the earth, weather permitting and space permitting, or connecting with the earth very deeply, from inside. But it's a way to come home. It's a way to find your voice again. It's a way to find the voice of the soul, and to know that really, whatever is going on, that sacred center, who you really are, the part of you that is never broken, the part of you that has never been damaged, is still there. And you can find that part. And so it's a combination. There'll be creative writing practices, which are fun and playful and spark a lot of vitality. It's amazing how much life energy opens up through finding your creative voice. And there'll be what I call, these soul reflective questions, way to really tune into, navigating this passage in your life, in the life of our world. How do we go forward? And what's the light? There's a lot of darkness in the world. There's a lot of violence that's escalating. There's, wars. There's intense racism. There's so many things that are so, it's very serious what's happening. There's like this war against life, the war against the earth, feels like, and a war against the earth.
Yeah.
And yet, like many people, I feel like we're at a turning point. And each time one of us individually connects with who we really are, I don't believe any of us came in as souls to hurt and to kill. That's my belief. I'm not, trying to convince everyone. We came from love.
Yes.
We came from creation. We're here for life. And yet we've gotten so off balance. And we feel it deeply. And, the people who come to my courses are generally pretty tuned in and pretty sensitive.
Yes, I can imagine.
And when you are sensitive, you need the creative outlet, whether you want to be, or already are a writer, or whether you want to live in a way that's centered and true to yourself, when you have your voice, when you have a way to access your voice, not what someone else is saying and not what you think you should be saying, but really what's your voice. That's what this course is designed to do, is to free your voice, your creative voice. The first class is listen to the voice of your heart. When there's I feel like you can't be alive today. And even if you're someone who doesn't listen to the news, there is just a level of heartbreak, I think, that we're feeling. We may be numb to it. We may not tune into it. You may be,
Yes.
but so listen to our hearts. And again, whether, people may come to the course because a parent is dying or a spouse has a scary diagnosis or you have a scary, our hearts are still here to guide us. Our soul is still here to guide us. So did I tell you enough?
Yes, yes, you have. Absolutely. And we'll share all the information below. Thank you. I'm excited for you. I know you and I will continue working together, and I'm excited to hear how this goes. I know that a lot of people would benefit. This is the work that's so needed and so required in the world right now. So I'm so glad that you're continuing to evolve in this beautiful work. Can I ask you kind of, and I know this question is asked kind of a lot, and it's probably slightly beaten up, but I find it interesting, is what advice would you give to the younger self based sort of on all the wisdom and experiences that you've acquired and all the things that you've been through to your younger self? Yeah. Like much younger self.
Trust who you are.
Trust who you are.
Trust what you want. Like all those years ago, when I was a little girl, in elementary school, all I wanted to do was write. And I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of, trauma in my family. Having a mother who was mentally ill and in suicide attempts in hospitals every other year. My parents loved me and they did their best, but, it was an intense situation and no one totally saw me as a budding writer. I was a good student. I was a quiet child, but to myself, I didn't really know it was okay to want to write, even though I got all this praise in school and everyone, like in my core, it was scary. And there was no one around me